Hey guys, what's up? It's me again, the wrist guy, and today I would like to talk about the question if scratches, dents and polishing are actually decreasing the value of your watch. Let's go. And before we start, I would like to do a small wrist check. Today I'm wearing the Grand, I have no idea what reference this is, Seiko Spring Drive GMT Limited Edition. I like this watch because it has a green dial, and you know I'm a sucker for green dials when you watched my video of the day date, which you can right here, and also the video of the Air King. Man, I really love green. But anyways, this video is all about scratches, dents and polishing. So let's start with scratches and modern watches. It's actually no big deal at all because modern watches tend to be worn. Most modern watches are not kept in the safe or in the drawer. So if you buy a modern watch unworn, you pay a little bit extra for the fact that it is unworn. But at the very moment you peel off that sticker and put it on your wrist, it loses some value. It's inevitable.
I am inevitable.
So my suggestion, if you want to have a modern Rolex, Omega, whatever, do not buy it unworn. Buy it in slightly mint condition, because then you will save yourself some cash and it gets some scratches anyway. And if you are concerned about the resale value, if you sell your modern watch to a private person, it will most likely not be an issue that it has some scratches, because if the person would like to have an unworn watch, it would probably go to a dealer. And that's the second thing. If you buy your used watch to a dealer, for example, any kind of shop that deals in vintage watches and used watches, they will either sell it as it is or polish the watch anyway. So again, no problem for you. So if you have any modern Rolex like a Daytona or a Pepsi and you are wondering if you should wear it or not, wear it, man. Don't worry about the scratches at all. It's a little bit different with vintage watches and scratches actually. In terms of vintage watches, you actually want it to be scratched, because vintage watches are, if you have one from the 70s, 50 years old. If that watch has no scratch in it, what the heck was the original owner doing with it? You want your vintage watch to be in original condition. And if original condition means it has scratches, then so be it. That's no problem at all. When it comes to vintage watches, there are more important things than scratches. Of course, if you have a vintage watch that has never been worn and has no scratch in it whatsoever, it's called new old stock. And it's very expensive, but I would not suggest you to go in that rabbit hole, because that thing is deep. So in conclusion, small scratches are no big deal, but what can be a big deal are dents, because in contrast to scratches, which can be polished, dents cannot be polished. So if you got a dent in your watch, that's something that can actually decrease the value of it. So be a little bit careful about dents. It doesn't matter actually if we're talking about a modern watch or a vintage watch, dents are bad in both cases. And So when you buy a watch, look out for dents. So you can find dents usually on edges of the case, on bezels, on clasps, sometimes on bracelets. Anywhere you can actually bang your watch at anything. So be careful about that. If you have a dent in your watch, it cannot be removed easily, and it will probably decrease its value more or less. Even more so with vintage watches. If you got a watch that is heavily dented and scratched, should you polish it? There you also need to make the distinction between vintage and new. So new watches, in my opinion, scratches aren't even that important, so polishing it is, I think, pointless. But if you want your watch to be scratchless, then go to your AD, polish your watch. Please do it at your AD or any kind of authorized service center. Do not let your watch be polished from any watchmaker out there, because polishing is something that a lot of people think they can when they actually can't. So that's something you should keep in mind. Let your watch only be polished from a professional AD or an authorized service center. And if you ask me, do not polish your modern watch. Do not polish actually any watch. Why would anyone want to polish a watch? When it comes to vintage watches, it's also a little bit different, because if you find a vintage watch that has no scratches in it, it's more likely that it has been polished than it is in new old stock condition. And polishing a vintage watch is something I will do a video about soon, but you do not want a watch that has been polished heavily. And now you will ask the question, How can I spot a polished watch? Bad polishing can actually be spotted quite easily. You just have to look out for the edges of the cases, for any kind of special design elements, tricky design elements, intricate parts of the case or the bracelet or the clasp. For example, on the classic Rolex cases, the edge between a brushed finish and a polished finish should be crisp. There should be a very clearly defined line between those two finishes. If the watch has been polished badly, this line is no longer a line, and you cannot make a distinction between where the brushing ends and the polishing starts. That's something you should be looking out for. And naturally, the more angular a case or a watch design is, the easier you can spot a badly polished watch. In my opinion, the easiest watch to spot a bad polishing is probably the Royal Oak, because it has so many edges, so many defined lines where brushing meets polishing, and angular styling and very distinctive key element points on that case. When you are not a professional AD and AP polisher, you will have trouble with that case, and you can see it. Go to Chrono 24 and look at old vintage APs and try to spot some bad polishing, for example. If the bezel is round, if the bracelet lacks this very fine light play, which you can usually see on an AP bracelet, it's been probably polished. That's something you do not want to have. So guys, in conclusion, scratches are not that bad. Actually, in vintage watches, you want to have scratches because it's a sign that the watch has not been polished. Dents are something I would avoid. So next time you go mountain climbing with your vintage Nautilus, maybe don't. And scratches can be polished out, dents cannot be polished, and dents tend to decrease value. Scratches tend to do nothing, actually, just be there. And try to avoid badly polished watches. You cannot completely avoid polishing, because at some point you will come across a polished vintage watch, and then you will have to ask the question if the polishing is good or bad, and then you need to be able to distinguish it. So again, look out for the edges of the case, look out for the bracelets, the clasps, the distinctive key elements of the case, the finishing lines, and then you can easily spot a good or a bad polish. So guys, that's been it. Thank you very much. What do you say about my policy of scratches? I don't care at all, to be honest. I like my watches scratched because I use them. That's why I would never polish any of my watches, to be honest. What do you guys think of it? Please let me know in the comments down below. I would really appreciate it if you like this video and subscribe to the channel, because I will be posting videos every single week. And yeah guys, stay at home, stay healthy, and have a good one. Bye bye.